In Seattle's famed Pike Place, you can find anything from smoked salmon to honey, even books about the history of soccer. During my trip to the market this past October, I also found multiple sports fans, and rightfully so. The eventual Super Bowl champions, Seattle Seahawks, were enjoying a strong start to the season. The Seattle Mariners were hosting the Detroit Tigers in Major League Baseball's American League Divisional Series. And National Hockey League side Seattle Kraken were days away from starting their season. But I was there for one of modern American soccer's biggest and oldest rivalries, the Cascadia Cup, featuring the Portland Timbers and the Seattle Sounders, a rivalry that has survived various leagues and turnaround. In addition to the match, a 1-0 win for Seattle, the visit also included the first fan interviews of this series.
Final question for you guys, score prediction for tonight.
3-1 Timbers.
That's Marco Beltman.
I think the same, but I don't want to give the same predictions, so 2-1 Timbers.
And this is his daughter, Leanne. Not only are they fans of the Timbers, they are also a part of the Timbers Army, a supporter section for the club's most loyal and passionate followers, many of which made the 3-hour trip from Portland to Seattle.
It's not Portland, it's Port Scum. That's who they are.
And this is Tom Hill, who supports the Sounders. Much like Hill's fandom, the Cascadia Cup started in the 1970s, and its birth happened in a crucial era, one that would reintroduce top-level soccer to the country and create lifelong fans through access, connection, and community. I'm Mihir Hassan, and this is the History of Soccer in the United States, Episode 3, Going National. If you listen to Episode 2, you know that we left off in 1930, right after the United States trip to the inaugural FIFA World Cup. Outside of a few World Cup appearances after that, nothing much happens, but that changed in the 1960s.
Still had no thought of being content with that 1-goal lead.
With the increase of jet travel, international teams started playing exhibition matches on American soil, sometimes drawing crowds of over 20,000, and 9 million viewers saw NBC's airing of the 1966 FIFA World Cup final between England and West Germany. But in general, soccer faced societal barriers. It was called foreign, and in extreme cases, communist or socialist. To attract an American audience, soccer needed money. They got that from multiple executives, such as Bill Cox, who founded the North American Professional Soccer League, or the NPSL, and Dick Walsh, the first commissioner of the United Soccer Association, aptly named USA for short.
To receive the Jules Rimet Cup and the winners' medals.
But most of these tycoons were not soccer fans. At his first press conference, Walsh famously said that he did not know the difference between a soccer ball and a billiards ball, and marketing promoted some questionable headlines. Advertisements called the game bone-bruising action, and the most popular sport in the world outside of girl watching. It was an American soccer identity in leagues that did not sign many Americans. To talk about how the game ended up growing is Jason Longshore, a radio broadcaster for Major League Soccer side Atlanta United. Over the past 25 years, Longshore has developed a relationship within Atlanta's soccer community, working with multiple teams while highlighting grassroots efforts through various podcasts and publications. Despite his initial inexperience with radio commentary, he
ended up talking to a group that got the rights to a preseason game over in Charleston, South Carolina. I called that game for local radio.
And shortly after, Atlanta United offered him the role as a color analyst for matches on 92.9 The Game, joining a week before their inaugural season opener in 2017. Outside of his matchday duties, Longshore has documented some of the Peach State's memories. He hosted the History of Atlanta Soccer podcast, which is published on Atlanta United's website. Some of the episodes were about the Atlanta Chiefs, which have some interesting parallels to today.
It's not a coincidence, it can't be, that Atlanta Chiefs brought pro soccer to Atlanta in 1967. Atlanta United brought back top flight major soccer to Atlanta in 2017. Both teams win the league title in their second year.
The Chiefs became a part of the NASL in 1968 after a merger between the NPSL, its former league, and USA. They averaged almost 7,000 fans per game in their inaugural season and won the 1968 NASL championship over the San Diego Toros in front of 15,000. The growth of the Chiefs comes down to Dick Cecil, the then vice president of the Major League Baseball side Atlanta Braves. He was joined by Welsh player coach Phil Woosnam, who called the role an opportunity to, quote, return something to the game, end quote, and spread its gospel. Woosnam later became the NASL's commissioner. In Atlanta,
you didn't have the easy, low-hanging fruit that I think teams in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles tried to play on, which was ethnic communities.
And so Cecil and Woosnam brought in players who could suit up on match day and help grow the game.
They signed players to 12-month contracts at the beginning. 6 months they would play, 6 months they would teach. And they went out and basically did camps and clinics for anybody who would ask. Schools, high school soccer basically started with the Chiefs. You had 5 or 6 schools that were playing soccer in 1966, and you had hundreds by the time you got to the 70s.
And according to Longshore, the players embraced this concept.
It wasn't seen as a burden. It wasn't seen as like, I don't want to go do this. It was seen as, I have to go do this. It's vital for the success of what we are doing. We need to go out and introduce the game and make people fall in love with it, and then they will come out and support us.
Offside called against the Chiefs as it comes upfield. Offside against Peter McParland. And
the Chiefs held multiple friendlies against top soccer teams as well. In one matchup, they beat English side Manchester City 3-2 in front of over 23,000 people. After the match, City's assistant manager Malcolm Allison told reporters that the Chiefs, quote, could not play in the 4th Division of England, end quote. Meanwhile, the media was impressed by the crowd. One columnist said afterwards that the spectators, quote, could not have cheered louder if the Braves won Game 7 of the World Series, end quote.
Hughes, McIntosh, long shot, wide to the left and out of bounds.
Despite the results and large crowds, the Chiefs' attendance catered towards the city's affluent areas. Some of this was caused by the effects of segregation. Caucasians were hesitant to share public spaces, such as parks, with African Americans, especially in suburbs, which held camps and clinics. Granted, both the Chiefs and the Atlanta Braves provided equipment to predominantly black neighborhoods, but the public parks and recreational spaces remained inadequate. The Chiefs' community-based initiatives enforced Atlanta's racial inequalities, but at this point, Longshore says that it was not a big problem.
I think back then it was literally whoever took interest was welcomed in and was taught.
Soccer was also prevalent in the Pacific Northwest, highlighted by the Cascadia Cup between 3 NASL teams, the Portland Timbers, Seattle Sounders, and Vancouver Whitecaps. For the sake of this podcast, let's just focus on the first two. The Sounders were founded in 1974, the Timbers in 1975. While their first matchup in Portland only saw a few thousand in attendance, both teams' fan bases grew over time.
Paul Crosby has the ball knocked out from under him.
In Seattle, over 58,000 people attended the Sounders' first match at the Kingdome, demolishing the previous national record. And from 1977 to 1981, they outperformed its co-tenants, the Seattle Mariners, in average attendance. Large crowds also came to Portland. Over 33,000 fans showed up in the team's final home match of 1975, increasing the Soccer City USA moniker amongst its residents. Zach Bigalke, a Penn State history professor featured in the first 2 episodes, grew up in Oregon. He also wrote a paper called Soccer in the Heart of Cascadia, Portland, Astoria, and the growth of the sport from 1890 to the advent of the World War. Bigalke thinks that some of the interest during the NASL era was helped by the culture in each city.
Portland and Seattle see themselves very much as the counterculture, right? It's right. A very countercultural space. They're predisposed to embrace sports kind of outside the American mainstream, but they're also predisposed to kind of see the chip on their shoulder, because you're in the Pacific Northwest, kind of discounted, not often seen as kind of major league cities.
Which brings us to my trip to Seattle. I spent some time walking around the city before last October's Cascadia Cup clash, and at a coffee shop a few blocks from Lumen Field, I found Tom Hill, one of over 30,000 fans in attendance. He called Portland Port scum at the start of this episode. He has a lot of stories to tell from the club's early years.
Probably my favorite thing from back then, they used to have kazoo night in the Kingdome. Probably nobody remembers that one, but there'd be one game a year, they'd hand out kazoos and people would do the kazoo thing with, the sounder thing, da 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 da.
Hill was playing soccer as a kid when the Sounders came into existence, and played it recreationally after graduating college, facing off against some former players.
So it's kind of cool to be playing against people you used to pay, to watch play.
So as for the match against the Timbers,
it's not a rivalry, this is the derby game.
A derby being the common term for rivalries between English soccer teams. And much like derbies, the strong feelings never cease.
Having played, the Timber for so long, it just means more when you want your team to get up and beat them. I think the Sounders seeming like they could do a little bit better with getting their guys to understand how big of a rivalry it is. Because I know Portland does that with their fans. They get their supporters out there talking with the team. So, yeah, you just want to win.
Timbers fan Leanne Beltman agrees.
I love it. I feel like a game against the Sounders always kind of juices up our season, no matter how things may have been going before. It doesn't matter once you're playing in Cascadia games.
And despite the hatred on the pitch, she and her dad Marco appreciate the community between both sides.
This is really awesome. I mean, both at home in Portland or here. Last year we were here and we were high up in the stadium. They have 2 sections reserved for us, and they let us into the stadium a couple hours before the game, and it's packed. And we were chanting, and the players came out to the field, and the whole stadium was empty except for these 2 sections, and we're chanting, and the players were all fired up because of the rivalry game, and it was really cool.
I think it brings a good energy into the fan base, into the team. When you're walking around here, when Seattle's walking around in Portland, there's always like some friendly trash talk in front of the stadium and everything. I just think it's a good, healthy growth moment.
The NASL created optimism about the future of soccer. Some of the world's best players, such as Pelé, Franz Beckenbauer, and Johan Cruyff, played in the league. More importantly, over 350,000 boys and girls were playing the game, and 5,800 high schools had teams in 1978. This was the sport for American kids because anybody could kick a soccer ball. In fact, NASL Commissioner Phil Woosnam said that the country would become the center of world soccer and the #1 sports league in the United States. The thought of this would make the Welshmen giddy, but there were still some glaring concerns. The first one was steady attendance. While places like Portland, Seattle, and New York consistently drew in 5-figure crowds, other places like Chicago came nowhere close. The second was money. Teams in Fort Lauderdale and St. Louis played at high school football facilities, and ownership for the Boston Minutemen stopped caring in the middle of the 1976 season. In 1978, the NASL planned to grow from 18 teams to 24, but much like others before, none of the 6 expansion sides made it past 3 seasons, and so the NASL folded in 1984. But soccer was a frenzy that year with the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. More than 1.4 million people attended on both coasts, averaging close to 45,000 per game. Over 78,000 people watched the United States play Costa Rica, and nearly 102,000 watched France beat Brazil in the gold medal match. The United States was ready for a global spotlight, and that happened during the 1994 FIFA World Cup, which built today's professional leagues. How the 1990s applied to today's culture is coming up on the final episode of the History of Soccer in the United States. I'm Mahir Simhassan.